For 50 years, Ron Howard seemed perfect, the all-American boy from Mayberry who became Hollywood royalty. But in his latest interview, he revealed the dark hiding behind the smile, the devastating choice he made in 1991 that haunts him still, the family member he almost lost to addiction while he was winning awards, and the moment on set when his body gave out. Ron's confession about what really happened during those missing months will break your heart. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma. And from the moment he opened his eyes, the room already spoke in dialogue. His father, Rance Howard, had adopted Howard as his stage name back in 1948 before joining the Air Force. His mother, Jean Spiegel, trained as an actress and married Rance in 1949 in Winchester, Kentucky. When Ron came along, Rance was still in uniform, balancing military life with screen dreams. But even before Ron learned to talk, he was already on film. At just 18 months old, he made his screen debut in a Western called Frontier Woman, filmed between late 1955 and early 1956. That set wasn't just his first job, it was the start of a life where childhood and camera marks blurred into one. While other toddlers learned to walk, Ron was learning where to stand under the lights. As television moved west, the Howards packed up and left Oklahoma behind. Rance drove the family straight to California, not for sunshine, but for proximity. He wasn't chasing glamour. He was betting everything on being near the new center of TV. Ron was just a toddler, but that move put him next to producers, writers, and sets before he ever saw a school desk. He was already working on Playhouse 90 before grade school, and by the time his brother Clint was born on April 20th, 1959, in Burbank, the family's plan was working. Their earnings were managed in-house. No studio guardians, no outsiders. Just a father carefully balancing his own acting roles with being the one-man support crew for his son. Rance took more than 140 film jobs and 177 TV appearances, not to chase fame, but to stay close to Ron's world and keep things moving. Then came October 3rd, 1960. Ron was 6. That night, America met Opie Taylor for the first time on The Andy Griffith Show. On paper, Ron was just another child actor, credited as Ronnie Howard. But the connection was different. On set, something deeper happened. Rance didn't just drop his son off, he challenged the writers. After an early read-through, he told the producers the show's father-son scenes felt fake. Andy Griffith listened. They shook hands on something real. Andy and Opie's relationship would mirror Ron and Rance's. That handshake built the show's soul. Over the years, Rance even guest-starred 5 times, staying close while Ron handled scripts and schedules most grown-ups would buckle under. For 8 seasons through 1968, Ron didn't just grow up. He lived inside a television childhood shaped by love, work, and adult expectations dressed in small-town stories. Their home in Burbank wasn't some star palace. Ron went to Robert Louis Stevenson Elementary, then David Starr Jordan Junior High, and later John Burroughs High School. The family ate meatloaf and fish sticks and saved money like actors who knew it could all end tomorrow. Scripts were piled near the dinner table, but Rance and Jean kept rules. No hired guardians, no stage parent chaos. Ron played Park League sports when he wasn't memorizing lines. Clint joined the industry too, quietly building a career with over 200 acting credits. They were brothers, but also co-workers, learning early what it meant to punch a clock with cameras. Ron's way of working didn't come from child star instinct, it came from training. Rance taught him how to listen, how to pause, how to respond like a person, not a performer. When Ron landed the role of Opie, it was because he didn't act like a kid actor. He just acted. Producer Sheldon Leonard noticed right away. He said Ron didn't try to be cute. He just told the truth. That's what Rance drilled into him. Be truthful, not cute. Even at 6, it showed. Ron's early pay was in the low hundreds of dollars per episode, but it climbed as the show became a hit. He was still losing baby teeth when fans stopped him in Burbank asking for autographs. But while his face was on screen, his childhood was quietly slipping away. One of the most unforgettable moments came in 1963, Season 4, Episode 1, Opie the Birdman. 9-year-old Ron filmed a scene where Opie raises orphaned baby birds after accidentally killing their mother. There were no dramatic tricks. He just stood there, breathing, blinking, letting real emotion lead. Director Bob Sweeney barely needed retakes. Andy Griffith called it adult-level timing. Ron used substitution. If the scene called for sadness, he thought of something that actually hurt. Then he let it go when the camera stopped. That wasn't just talent. It was control most kids never have. But even with love on set, Ron felt alone. He called those years a golden cage, safe but sealed. On set, he had a tiny schoolroom near Stage 40 at Desilu, Cahuenga. California law said 3 hours of school, 8 hours total per day. A welfare worker stayed nearby, but Ron didn't have real classmates. He did math while Grips rolled dollies. At lunch, he sat with his dad or the prop guy. Andy would play guitar. Don Knotts told clean jokes. They tried to make it feel normal. But Ron missed sandlot baseball and neighborhood bike rides. He didn't complain, but he felt it. In 1962, the Music Man brought a new kind of pressure. He was 8 years old and cast as Winthrop Peru in a big-budget musical. He was tone-deaf. He had 2 left feet. Music conductor Ray Heindorf spent hours coaching him through the song Gary, Indiana. Ron panicked during the soft shoe routine and whispered to Shirley Jones, "I can't do it, Shirley. I can't do it." She helped him calm down. The crew shot him from the knees up and added tap sounds later. But it worked. His shy, sweet performance helped make the film one of the biggest hits of 1962. What no one saw was how hard he'd fought behind the scenes. Between takes, Ron memorized not just his lines, but Shirley Jones's too. He played with dolls and acted out full scenes, directing miniature actors through their marks and lines. To others, it looked like play. To Shirley, it looked like a director in the making. Rance had already started writing scripts for the Flintstones and other shows. He taught Ron how to break down a scene, how to understand a character's reason for every word. Those lessons didn't disappear. They stayed buried until Ron started directing films like Grand Theft Auto at just 23. By 1966, Ron tried something new. He joined The Monroes, a Western series filmed in the Wyoming Rockies. It was rough, real terrain. He learned horseback riding by watching ranch hands. The location was expensive. The series only lasted 26 episodes before NBC canceled it in 1967. Ron was 13. For the first time, he felt rejected. The Andy Griffith Show was still going strong, but the Monroes hit him hard. He thought it was his fault. That sting stayed with him. In 1968, the Brady Bunch pilot came calling. Ron was offered an audition. He turned it down. Not because he didn't want it, but because his parents said no. Rance and Jean made a rule. Either of them had to be home every day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. if a job came in. They wanted balance. They wanted him to grow up normal. Ron wanted that too. At 14, he craved school, space, friends. He passed on the audition, and it might have saved his career. Because by 1974, he became Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, the role that carried him into his teen years and gave him the money and freedom to step behind the camera. In 1969, Ron's agent pulled off something big. He secured Ron residuals from the Andy Griffith Show reruns, about $50,000 a year. That was more than Sandy Koufax earned at his peak in baseball. But the Howards didn't splurge. They kept it lean. They opened savings accounts, bought U.S. bonds, and lived the same as always. Ron begged to invest in a go-kart business with friends. His parents let him. He lost about $25,000. That was his first lesson in risk. Acting made him money. But managing it, that was a different story. That lesson stuck. On April 1st, 1968, the final episode of The Andy Griffith Show aired. Ron was 14. He knew the set by heart. He knew where every light hung and where every grip stood. That last week felt heavy. People kept call sheets as souvenirs. Andy and Ron stayed late talking baseball. Their on-camera goodbye was quiet, but Ron felt something ending. He had lived his entire childhood 48 feet from a camera lens. Now he had to be a teenager, and within 2 years, he was already balancing school with auditions. The day they took down the Mayberry sets, the next chapter had already started. In 1974, Ron Howard was just 19 years old when he walked into Gary Marshall's office and changed the course of his life. He didn't read the lines like the others. He just sat down and ordered a cherry phosphate like he'd been going there every day. The chemistry with Henry Winkler was instant. It wasn't in the script, but it didn't matter. For 12 minutes, Ron became Richie Cunningham, and Marshall saw it. ABC had doubts. They worried that the kid from Mayberry couldn't pass for a teenager anymore. But Gary Marshall pushed back, and Ron signed a 5-year deal for $7,500 per episode. He had beaten out 35 other actors, not by acting louder, but by sounding exactly like someone who'd help your grandmother with groceries. That's what got him 255 episodes. By season 5 in 1977, Ron had been playing the same cheerful teenager for so long it started to feel fake. He was 23, playing a kid frozen in time while the real world was burning outside. Vietnam was everywhere, on the news, in the papers, and it didn't make sense that Richie never noticed. So Ron wrote a 3-page memo to ABC. He asked for real topics. He pitched a story about Richie facing the draft. They said no, too political, too risky for advertisers. So the compromise came in glances. Richie reading newspapers about the war in the background, a passing comment about deferments. Ron felt stifled. He later told TV Guide that being a happy teenager when the world wasn't happy anymore made him feel like he couldn't breathe. That frustration planted something inside him. He didn't just want to act, he wanted control. He wanted to direct. In 1976, Fonzie was everywhere. Leather jackets were selling. Posters, toys, lunchboxes, all adding up to $50 million in merchandise. ABC tried to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Ron had seen this kind of thing before. His father, Rance, had fought for billing rights his entire career. So Ron stood up. He was making $15,000 per episode, but he told them he'd walk. He gave them 48 hours to keep the title the way it was. If they didn't, they'd lose him, and they risked a $500,000 contract breach lawsuit. Gary Marshall sided with him. The show wasn't just about Fonzie, it was about a family. ABC backed down halfway. The name stayed, but Fonzie got top billing in the credits. It was a silent win. Then, in October 1977, Ron got his shot. He directed Season 5, Episode 5, A Date with Fonzie. The budget was thin, just $10,000, 32 scenes, 3 days. He showed up with a shot list so detailed, the crew called it Spielberg level. One scene followed Fonzie through Arnold's Diner in a 90-second tracking shot. Normally, that would take hours. Ron nailed it in 2 takes, saving $3,000. Ratings jumped by 12%. That meant 31 million people watched. ABC gave him 2 more episodes to direct and paid him $2,500 extra per episode on top of his acting fee. Henry Winkler later said Ron made him uncomfortable in the best way. He forced real emotion instead of just catchphrases. While all this was happening, something else was growing. In 1976, Ron acted in Eat My Dust, a cheap teen crash movie from Roger Corman. But it wasn't just for fun. He had made a deal. He'd act only if Corman let him direct the next one. That film was Grand Theft Auto, released in 1977. Ron co-wrote it with his dad, Rance. The budget was $602,000, but the film made $15 million. That's a 2,400% return. They destroyed 70 cars on camera, including a $40,000 Rolls-Royce, 3 Cadillacs, and 7 police cars. Ron didn't wait for permits. He shot on real roads near Victorville. The cameras shook. The cars flipped. The chaos was real. He even used his mom, his brother Clint, and Happy Days castmate Marion Ross in the movie. The film hit theaters on June 16, 1977, and suddenly, no one was laughing at the redhead from Mayberry anymore. Ron was only 21 when he married Cheryl Alley on June 7, 1975. They were high school sweethearts. He proposed on a couch at his parents' house. Henry Winkler was his best man. Andy Griffith and Tom Bosley were there too. When Cheryl went into labor with their first child, Ron was on set. He dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. Years later, he said it clearly. Cheryl was the real story. She always had been. While he filmed, wrote, and directed, she was the one holding it all together. In 1982, Ron took a leap with Night Shift, a dark comedy set in a morgue. The story was wild. 2 guys running a prostitution ring out of a New York City morgue. It starred Henry Winkler and introduced Michael Keaton in his first major role. The budget was $8 million. It earned $21 million. Keaton recorded ideas into a tape recorder, danced around with a Walkman, and yelled, "Is this a great country or what?" Test audiences thought it was too raunchy. The MPAA got nervous, but it worked. Winkler got a Golden Globe nomination. Keaton exploded onto the scene. The film was bold, and it proved Ron could make studio pictures that didn't play it safe. Then came Splash. In 1984, Ron directed Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah in a love story about a man and a mermaid. It was Disney's first touchstone release. Budget: between $8 million and $11 million. Gross: $69.8 million. The mermaid tail weighed 35 pounds and took hours to attach. Daryl Hannah shot all the underwater scenes herself, no stunt double. She swam better than the professionals. Ron and producer Brian Grazer were stunned. At first, the film had a sad ending. Madison returns to the ocean. Alan stays on land. But during test screenings, every wife in the room hated it. So they changed it. Alan dives in after her. Love wins. The critics approved. It scored 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. It was nominated for an Oscar. Tom Hanks became a star. And for Ron, it was confirmation. He wasn't just good. He could lead the box office. After Splash, Ron and Brian Grazer co-founded Imagine Entertainment in November 1985. It was serious from the start. They merged their companies and took Imagine public the next year. TriStar Pictures signed a deal. So did Showtime and the Movie Channel. Their first offerings were TV movies, theatrical films, and eventually shows like Sports Night. Their offices in Century City got a $4.5 million makeover in 1998. People whispered about the spending. But the numbers spoke louder. Over 43 Oscar nominations and 198 Emmys across decades. Imagine films would gross more than $15 billion worldwide. In 1995, Apollo 13 changed everything again. Ron directed it on a $52 million budget. They bought actual NASA mission control panels, some for just $1 from government surplus. They filmed 612 zero-gravity scenes aboard the Vomit Comet, each lasting 23 seconds. That meant 10 days of parabolic flight dives. The explosion scene with Ed Harris had to be shot 12 times. It cost $340,000. One test went wrong and singed Harris's eyebrows. Ron refused to fake it. The switch positions, the radio chatter, every blinking light, it had to be right. The movie made $355 million worldwide. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards and won 2. But getting there nearly killed him. Ron worked 18-hour days for 90 straight days. He sat in on NASA briefings, watched every reel, led night rehearsals. On day 90, he collapsed. Dehydration, hypertension. The set went quiet. Production stopped for 36 hours. When he returned, the crew wore shirts that said, "Mission Control." It wasn't just a movie anymore. It was proof. Ron had buried Opie Taylor. He didn't need to prove it again. Then he made a mistake. EDTV, released in 1999, cost $80 million. It made $50 million total. Ron had turned down Castaway for it. It came out a month after The Truman Show, which told the same story, but better. Critics said it felt like a warning about media while being part of the problem. It cost Imagine $30 million in losses. But Ron learned, he listened, and he moved forward. By 1999, Imagine had 23 projects in development. Universal gave them funding for 6 films per year, each with a $60 million cap. Ron didn't direct all of them, but his name was on every one. The offices were busy. The staff had grown to 140 people. Their output in the 1990s alone had earned $2.3 billion. In 2001, Ron Howard stood behind the camera directing A Beautiful Mind with a $58 million budget and something different in mind. He wanted to make the audience feel what John Nash felt, not through dizzying effects or strange filters, but through silence, through trust. He filmed Nash's hallucinations with no visual cues, no shimmering edits, no warning. The characters Charles Herman and William Parcher felt real because, to Nash, they were. And Ron wanted the viewers to discover the truth at the same time Nash did. Most scenes were shot in chronological order, 90% of the entire film unfolding just as Nash lived it. Ron returned to Princeton 3 separate times to get it right. The results were staggering. On March 24, 2002, he won the Oscar for Best Director. But the truth hiding beneath the story wasn't just Nash's. It was Ron's too, because behind the award-winning setups and smooth edits were pieces of his own life scattered across decades of filmmaking, regret, pressure, family, and quiet pain. A Beautiful Mind was a success, but it didn't escape backlash. Critics attacked the omissions. They noticed the missing parts of Nash's story: the affairs, the abandoned son from 1953, the 1954 arrest that cost him his security clearance. Mathematicians called out the simplified explanation of Nash equilibrium. But none of that stopped the movie from pulling in over $313 million worldwide. It won 4 Oscars. Ron had proven that a story could still win hearts, even when it trimmed the sharpest edges off reality. Just 5 years later, Ron was facing a very different kind of chaos. In 2006, he directed The Da Vinci Code on a $125 million budget with Tom Hanks as Robert Langdon. But the Catholic Church wasn't welcoming. Saint-Sulpice in Paris and Westminster Abbey in London both shut their doors. Ron's team had to recreate entire churches digitally, and even that didn't go smoothly. At Saint-Sulpice, the virtual coordinates were off by centimeters, and nothing matched the compositor's expectations. Westminster's scenes had to be filmed instead at Lincoln and Winchester cathedrals. Lincoln charged $100,000 and allowed filming from August 15 to 19 in 2005. The Louvre gave permission, but only at night. No lights on the Mona Lisa. So 5 fake copies had to be made just to get the shot. The film grossed $758 million worldwide. The numbers looked easy. The process never was. That same year, Ron was still grieving quietly. His father, Rance Howard, had been in nearly everything: Apollo 13, Splash, A Beautiful Mind, Parenthood. But on November 25, 2017, Rance died at 89 in Los Angeles, just months after his wife Judy had passed in January. He had been born Harold Engel Beckenholt in Duncan, Oklahoma, on November 17, 1928. Ron called him a Depression-era farm boy who changed everything by chasing a dream. Rance had been on The Waltons, Seinfeld, Grey's Anatomy, and even earned an Emmy nomination for Through the Magic Pyramid. The man who taught Ron how to act and how to listen was gone. In 2008, Ron tackled Frost Nixon, based on the 2006 play. With a $25 to $29 million budget, he captured the quiet war between David Frost and Richard Nixon. He studied archival footage. He watched every twitch, every pause, every breath. When Frank Langella finally said Nixon's infamous line, "I let the American people down," it hit like thunder. The film earned 5 Oscar nominations at the 81st Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. But despite the acclaim, it only brought in $28.5 million. It was one of the rare Best Picture nominees that lost money. Long before all this, on June 7, 1975, Ron had married his high school sweetheart, Nancy Morgan. They were both 21. They made a rule from the start: no work talk at dinner. That rule held for 50 years. Nancy had acted too. She'd been on Happy Days. She understood the business, but she protected their home. They raised 4 kids: Bryce Dallas, twins Jocelyn and Paige, and Reed, while Ron juggled sets and studios. When Bryce was born on March 2, 1981, Ron did something he later regretted. He directed her school play when she was 5. He meant well, but it pushed her into acting before she chose it herself. Years later, he apologized. She forgave him. She studied at NYU's Tisch School and launched on her own with The Village in 2004, later earning $8 million per Jurassic World film. Ron stepped back. He didn't push the others. He had learned. But not all lessons came easily. In the 1980s, his brother Clint fell into cocaine and alcohol addiction. Clint had been a child actor too, and Hollywood didn't treat him kindly. By 1990, he was at rock bottom. Ron told him the truth: go to rehab or lose the relationship. Clint chose life. In their 2021 memoir, The Boys, they told it all. Ron admitted he felt guilty. His own rise had made Clint feel left behind. In 1991, Jocelyn was born. Just 1 year later, Ron left for 6 months to film Far and Away in Ireland. It was the longest he'd ever been away from Nancy, from Bryce, from his newborn. When he came home, Jocelyn had changed. Bryce barely remembered him. Nancy had been parenting alone. The moment shook him. He promised never to take long international shoots again. He kept that promise, mostly. But in 2005, he broke it. Cinderella Man needed long reshoots. He missed more of Bryce's life. In 2025, during their 50th anniversary, Ron donated a bench to John Burroughs High School where they first met. He made a quiet confession. He still regretted missing so much. Nancy nodded. The no-work dinner rule still stood, but she wished he had seen the cost earlier. In 2020, he directed Hillbilly Elegy. Netflix paid $45 million for it. The film was torn apart by critics. He got a Razzie nomination for Worst Director. But Glenn Close still earned Oscar, SAG, and Golden Globe nods. That same year, Ron released Rebuilding Paradise, a documentary on the 2018 Camp Fire that killed 85 people and destroyed 14,000 homes. His mother-in-law had lived in paradise. The footage The stories, it broke him. He called it the hardest project he'd ever done. He filmed for over a year. He didn't look away. Then came Eden. In 2025, Ron went in a new direction, a survival thriller set in the 1930s Galapagos Islands. He had first heard the story 15 years earlier on vacation. He started outlining the movie on his BlackBerry that same night. It starred Sydney Sweeney, Jude Law, Ana de Armas, Vanessa Kirby, Daniel Bruhl. The $55 million film opened in 664 theaters and made just $1 million. Ron called it a creative risk that left him full of anxiety. He had already been close to quitting. In 2018, Solo: A Star Wars Story collapsed around him. He'd taken over mid-shoot after the original directors were fired. He reshot 70% of the film. It still bombed. In 2025, he said publicly that Solo almost ended his directing career. But Bryce pulled him back. He returned with projects for Apple TV+. He kept going. By 2025, Ron had been married 50 years. He'd co-run Imagine Entertainment for 40 years with Brian Grazer. The company had made over 50 films, earned 47 Oscar nominations, and 289 Emmy nods. His net worth passed $200 million. He credited his dad for teaching him to stay humble. He now mentors young directors. He still tells stories. He still remembers the bench at Burroughs High, the empty seat at dinner, the baby who barely recognized him. He remembers it all.